Last week we started our March series on wise stewardship and looking at wise stewardship. And throughout this month, here's what we're going to be looking at. We're looking at how to handle our money and how to distribute our resources in a way that honors God rather than in a way that consumes us and consumes our lives. If you weren't here last week, we handed out devotion cards to go along with this topic. They are still on the table out there, so if you weren't here last week, stop by the table on the way out, and it has the devotion cards with scriptures and some things about this topic to kind of help you focus on that for the month and to learn that and implement that into your life. Now, last week what we did is this. We started off looking at the destructive power that money can have in our spiritual lives. And we talked about how with money comes the temptation to actually replace God with a trust in money in our lives, to basically make money or the pursuit of money our God instead of our actual designer and our creator. The wealthy, we are reminded in the Bible continually, over and over again, that the wealthy need to be very careful of the destructive power of wealth, that they need to be on their guard continually. And I shared with you last week, when the Bible talks about the wealthy, he's talking about who? Us, okay? Pretty much anyone living in America would be considered wealthy by the terms of the Bible when it talks about the wealthy. One of the stats I shared with you, which most people found amazing, was this. If your household brings in a gross income in your household of $50,000 or more, you are actually the top 1% on this planet with the amount of wealth you have that you control. At the same time, if you have a gross household income of at least $25,000 or more gross, that puts you in the top 3% of the world's population. All right? So every time the scripture talks about the wealthy, and the wealthy need to be on their guard, and the wealthy need to be worried about money and the influence it has in their life, it's always talking about us as Americans because the society we live in and the amount of wealth we live in. In Luke 12:15, Jesus, we read this last week, Jesus says this, he says, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own." All right? And that could kind of be a standard statement of how God views money throughout the scriptures and talking to the wealthy. Today we're going to look at a healthy view of money, and we're going to look at what does God desire from us of how we're to use our money or at least view our money. What is that thought process supposed to be? You see, money can be a blessing or it can become a curse in your life. It can be something that is an asset to you, or it is something that can consume you, and it can affect your day-to-day task. It can affect how you view life, the stress levels in your life. Money can have a huge influence in your life. But the problem is not the money itself. The problem is the attitude we have with it. All right? And so I want to talk about that a little bit. Is money's not the issue. It's our attitudes in regards to money. Like so many things in life, how you view things can make something a blessing or it can make something a curse. It can make something that benefits your life, or it can make something that doesn't benefit your life and it actually hurts your life. Let me give you some other examples of this to kind of give you this idea that it's your view of money that makes it either a blessing or a curse. Baseball. Okay, how many of you are baseball fans in here? I know Greg is. We have a few. Okay, right now, you know spring training's on, and so baseball is this beautiful thing. Spring training, you know spring's coming. It makes you feel good because the players are back playing. If you go to baseball games, it's the greatest sport to go to because you just get to go sit outside. Now, I will say this. In Tulsa, it's not as enjoyable as it was up north, all right? Because up north, you could go to a nice evening game. It'd be like 72, 73 out. Enjoy the evening. Here, you come out and it's still like 118 degrees in the night and you sweat like a pig and you're just like, this is uncomfortable. But baseball is a beautiful thing when it's viewed correctly. At the same time, baseball can also be viewed as a big brother weapon. So if you had a bigger brother like I did, there was times I can remember that baseball up there wasn't a beautiful thing. It was because my brother was upset with me and he would pick up baseballs and he would chuck them at me. All right? And I remember one time I did something. I'm not going to say I'm innocent, and I can't remember what it was, but I probably deserved it. But I still have this, I can remember this in your life. Like you have little things where you see your life pass before you, and they never leave you. So all I remember is the garage was here, the house was over here, and I remember running this way, and my brother yelling at me. And when I turned like this to look back, I remember seeing a baseball come right at me, and it pegged me like right in the eye right there. And I remember I got a nice black eye for like 3 weeks for my brother. So baseball, if it's viewed right, is a wonderful blessing. If it's not, it becomes a curse in your life. Another example, a job. Okay, you can have a job and you can view it as a great source of way to benefit your family, take care of your family, to provide for your family. At the same time, some people view a job as it's what their life is about, and it actually steals them from their families, and they live with their job instead of with their families. So it can have an effect one way or the other. It can switch things back or forth how you view things. Gasoline. And I just saw my sister's in here, so she remembers probably some of these stories. So gasoline is another one of those things. It can be used in a way that fuels your car. At the same time, it can be viewed as a toy to a child. Now, real quick, how many of you children played with gasoline as a kid? Raise them high so I know I'm not alone. Okay, there's enough of us. Good, I don't feel like I'm alone. So those of us in here, you know gasoline can be like a toy, and it's interesting, and you're trying to figure out. So I remember once I lit the garage inside, like the interior of the garage on fire. I lit the backyard on fire with gasoline. My friends filled up one of those old metal buckets that we used to have back in the day and blew it up with gasoline. I was smart enough not to be part of that one because I saw it going down. I was like, nah, that's too much gas. And I walked away. So gasoline can be used as a positive thing, but it can also be viewed as a negative thing that becomes a curse. Another one, the internet. The internet, it can be a great resource of information and connecting to people. At the same time, you can use it and view it as an alternative reality where it actually isolates you from the real world and real interactions with real living human beings. We see this in this younger generation where they come home and they sit on computers and they sit on the internet doing what they do, and they have very little interaction with other human beings. And you'll notice this, they don't have good people skills, not because they're bad kids, just because they don't have them, all right? They don't interact with human beings so much. They spend so much time on the internet. The last one, people. You can view them as a source of meaningful relationships that add quality to your life, that are something that enriches your life. At the same time, some people can view relationships and people as just a tool to the ends of their dreams and their desires, and people are just things you use to get what you want. All right? How we view things affects whether they become a blessing in our lives and the lives of others, or if they become a curse. So, today I'm going to talk about how to view money. What is the God-honoring way to view money? How would God desire for you to view money? Now, the answer we find to this question in the scriptures is from the same chapter we looked at last week that tells us about the destructive power of it. Last week in 1 Timothy chapter 6, we looked at this scripture, verses 9 through 10. It said this: "But people who long to be rich fall into temptations and are trapped by many foolish and harmful desires that plunge them into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows." That's the one we looked at last week. It warns us about the destructive power that money can have in our lives. Later on in that same chapter, though, the Apostle Paul gives us the healthy view of how we're supposed to view money. So first he goes, this is a destructive power. 7 verses later, he goes, and here's how it's a positive way to look at it. And here's what he writes in verses 17 through 19. He says this. He says, "Teach those who are rich in the world not to be proud and not to trust in their money, which is so unreliable. Their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those in need, always being ready to share with others. By doing this, they will be storing up treasures as a good foundation for the future so that they may experience true life." All right? So this morning, here's what I want to just simply do. I'm going to walk through that passage, and I just want to point out some things that tell us how we are supposed to view money, how we are to mentally think about money in our lives. And there's 4 things in that scripture that came out very clear to me as I started looking through the scripture about a healthy view of money. The first thing we see is this. We're supposed to understand that money is unreliable. Okay? That money is unreliable. Now, most of you, if you're over the age of, let's say, 30, have you already figured this truth out, that money is unreliable? Okay? How many of you have gone through rough financial times in your life? Okay? Of those same people, how many of you have had good times as well? Okay. And usually in your good times, you're hoping that you never have bad times again, but it always turns out you have bad times again because money and wealth are totally unreliable. And that's what Paul tells us here. He says this in verse 17. He says, "Teach those who are rich," so teach us, the rich, Teach those who are rich in this world not to be proud and not to trust in their money. Now, understand the Philippians, or no, is this, who's he writing to? 1 Timothy. I forget who he's writing to. I think it was the Philippians or the Ephesians. Whatever, the city he's writing a specific letter to, they're living in a very wealthy town. Okay, so these people are people that have cash as well. So he understands how they think, and it's why he's warning them so much and why he's saying what they tend to do. And what they tend to do is this, and we do this as Americans, is we find pride in our wealth. One of the things that makes us feel better than other people is I have more than you, right? It's a temptation we have. I have nicer things than you. I have a nicer car. I've got a bigger house. I have more things. I have a bigger bank account. I have all these things. And by that, it makes me feel like I'm a better person than you. And we take pride in money. And he says, teach those who are rich not to be proud and not to trust in their money. Interesting thing I found doing some research. During the 2008 collapse, the financial collapse, during the next 3 years, they found in New York City that work on Wall Street, so over 1,500 people that worked on Wall Street committed suicide over those 3 years. Why? They're people that trusted their money. And then when it all fell apart, they felt like their world fell apart, and they went, my entire trust, my foundation's gone. I have nothing to live for. I have nothing to go on with. And they committed suicide. 1,500 over a 3-year period after the financial collapse, 500 a year. That's over one a day that were people connected with Wall Street that were working it. Those are people that put their trust in wealth. And then what they found out was this, it's unreliable. Now, one of the things we have a tendency to do is this. We think we live in America, we'll always have our wealth, okay? Let me just give you a little case study. This is very interesting. Venezuela. Has everyone heard of Venezuela? Okay, little South American country. In 2008, not too far back, by 2008, they were looked at as actually becoming one of the richest countries in the world. They have the largest oil reserves in the world, and as recently as 2008, they were the up-and-coming, money coming out of their ears country in the world. In 2017, their inflation rate just last year was 946%. Now, if you don't know what that means, let me tell you what that means. What's something that costs like $1 right now? What's the loaf of bread? A loaf of bread's almost $2, isn't it? Kit Kat, the little, how many of you, Christian, do you still have your Mike and Ike box? Hold it up, Christian. All right, you can buy those little things at one of the, Rite Aids or whatever. You can buy one of those for $1. Those are usually 99 cents or 98 cents for $1. You can buy one of those. What 946% inflation means is if Christian bought that box of Mike and Ike's last year for $1, today they would cost $9.46. That's what that means. If you were buying a loaf of bread last year for $2 in Venezuela, now it would cost you almost $20. That's what 946% inflation looks like in 1 year. Something that costs $2 now costs almost $20. 82% of Venezuela right now lives in poverty. 82%. And this is the most interesting thing. Last year in 2017, the average Venezuelan lost 19 pounds because they can't feed themselves. In 8 to 10 years, that entire society has collapsed. And money that used to be, we're one of the richest nations in the world, or on the cusp of being one of the richest nations, is now one of the poorest, and the people are having a hard time even finding food. So instead of having 3 meals a day, they're cut down to about 2, and they're now having trouble even affording 2, and so they're losing weight, 19 pounds, not because they were trying to lose weight, because they can't keep the weight on because they don't have enough food and access to food. Is that not amazing? Okay? Money is unreliable. We try to convince ourselves it's not. It's where we can put our trust. It's the thing that will solve our issues in life. It's not. It's completely unreliable, and Paul wants you to understand, as a Christian, the first step you have to understand is it's unreliable. The second thing we see is this, is that money is a gift from God, all right? We see that money is a gift from God. 1 Timothy 6:17, the next verse, he says, their trust should be in God, who richly gives us all we need for our enjoyment. Now, this one's a little tough as well, is that money is a gift from God. All the money you have access to, it is a gift from God. Let me tell you why this is tough and why I think it's tough personally. I earn my money, right? I go to a job, Some of you go, no, he doesn't. Trust me, I earn my money. I work hard for you. I take that very seriously, that I earn my money that I receive from this church. But all of you do as well. Typically, how you get money, you go to a job. They told you they're going to pay you so much money. You put your time in, and they pay you your money. And then at the end of the week, you what? You deserve your paycheck, right? You deserve your pay because you put your time in. So it's very easy for us when God says and wants us to understand that all money is a gift from God to go, wait. No, it's not. I earn that. That's all me. I work harder than maybe someone else, so I make more money, or I got more education here, so I make more money. It's not a gift from God. I earn those things. That's on me. That makes it very hard for us to sometimes accept all of our money is a gift from God. But let me help you understand why you need to understand it's a gift from God. How many of you picked where you were born and to whom you were born? How many of you picked that? Nobody? Nobody picked where you were going to be born or to whom you were going to be born. Okay, so it was all random chance, right? You don't get to pick that. You don't get to choose that. You just come out, and you come out wherever you come out. Here's the thing. Don't take that too far, people, okay? Don't take that too far, all right? Here's the thing. Your odds could have been you were born in Haiti, where they earn $1,700 a year. That's average income. You could just simply have been born there, and you could work just as hard as you work here in the United States and be making $1,700 a year. That could have happened. You could have been born in Liberia, an African nation, make $900 a year. Work just as hard and still only make $900 a year. You could have been born in Afghanistan, where they make about $2,000 a year, and it's war-torn they've been in wars for 700 years. I don't know, that place never stops fighting. There's always battles going on. You could have just as easily been born there, work just as hard or not harder, and make $2,000 a year instead of making maybe $40,000 a year. All right? The reason I tell you that is this. You don't get to make those choices about where you're born and how much you're going to make. Some of that's just given to you. Some of that is a gift from God. All right? We are blessed to be Americans. We are blessed to have been born here. Trust me, if I had the choice to live here or Afghanistan, or if I asked you, would you rather live in Afghanistan or grow up in the United States, who's going to say Afghanistan? Nobody. Okay? It's a gift from God that I got to be born here. All right? And it's something we shouldn't take for granted. It's something we should be grateful for. The blessings we have, the wealth we have, the paychecks we get, all of those things ultimately should be accredited to God, and we should be thankful for Him and be grateful to Him that we have those advantages, that we have those blessings, that we get to live the lifestyle we get to live. If you would understand that and realize how little control you actually have over things, you would start to understand how grateful you need to be for the gift that God has given you. So money needs to be viewed as a gift. The third thing we see in the scripture in verse 18 is this, is that money is a tool to do good. Now, money is to be used as a tool to do good. Here's what he says in verse 18. He says this, tell them to use their money to do good. They should be rich in good works and generous to those that are in need, always being ready to share with others. Okay? Our money we have, God did not gift it to you so that you could just improve your lifestyle. Okay, that's not the purpose of why God gave you the gift of money. God gave you the gift of money so that you could also use that to improve other people's lifestyles as well and help them out when they're in times of need. It's not just about you. It's not supposed to be spent just on you. Your money is not just for your bank account to buy the things you want. Your money is given to you so that, yes, you can take care of your needs, but it also says in other scriptures, and we're going to be talking about these in coming weeks, that God will give you what you need, and He'll give you some extra so you can be generous with others, so you can help others. The early church, if you go to Acts 2, Acts 3, Acts 4, and you look at those chapters of the Bible, the early church, it talks about all those people in the early church didn't view their money as their own, and they just viewed it as a resource to help each other. So it says the early church, nobody went without their needs being met. That says people didn't consider the properties they owned, the bank accounts they had as their own. They viewed it as something to give to the church and give to the leaders of the church to distribute to help those that were in need. And you see this beautiful picture of a church of people who saw money as something to help others, not just greedy to go, it's all about me, 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 me. All right, so we have to understand our money is a tool to do good. And the last point is this, and it's a point you've probably rarely ever heard in a church, but I want you to understand this because we see here in verse 19, it says this. Last thing we need to understand about money and how we view it is money can enhance your relationship with God. All right? How many times have you been in church before and money's just evil, evil, evil? Right? Money can enhance your relationship with God. It can actually be something that enhances that relationship, draws you closer to God. Money can be that instrument, that tool that actually helps make that happen. Here's what he says in verse 19. He says, by doing this, now you read that and go, by doing what? Well, the first things he's already talked about. So by doing this, meaning you're not trusting in your money, you are grateful for the money you have, you understand it's a gift from God, and you're using your money to help others. By doing this, those three things, it goes on to say, it says, they will be storing up their treasure as a good foundation for the future so they may experience true life. Okay? Here's how money enhances your ability to grow closer to God. One of the things is when you view money correctly, all right, it makes you generous. It makes you appreciative of God. It makes you grateful for God. When you have those qualities in your life, those are things that draw you closer to God because you come to appreciate Him more and more. The other thing, when we learn how to manage our money correctly, which is what we're going to talk about next week, is how to manage your money. How do you appropriately handle your money well? When you do that, it frees you from the bonds of money. Some of you, you've dealt with debt before, right? Stupid debt because you didn't handle your money well, and it consumes your life. So we're going to talk about that next week. If you can avoid accruing a lot of debt, it frees you up to actually be the person God calls you to be. If you acquire a bunch of debt, it's something that drives your life. It enslaves you, and you have to do certain things, and you don't get any bang back for it. You can't be generous with people because you're sitting there going, I can't be generous with them because I got to pay these bills, and I have this debt, and I can't afford to do that because it's going to put me in more debt. And it really puts handcuffs on you of what you can do. So when you learn to manage your money well, it gives you freedom to focus on the things of God and using it the way He wants you to, which draws you closer to Him. The last thing, too, is when we use our money correctly, which we'll talk about in 2 weeks, with one of the weirdest passages of Scripture that rarely ever gets talked about in church, but it's one of my favorite ones about money. When you learn to use your money well, what you do is you get to do more and more kingdom work in your life, and as you do more kingdom work in your life and you see God work through you to meet the needs of others, to help others, to bring people to an understanding of who God is and the role He plays in their life, when you get to do more and more of that because of the money you have attained and do more kingdom work, it draws you closer to God because you can see Him working in your life. So money can actually be an incredible enhancer to your relationship with God. You see, viewing your money correctly, managing your money correctly, and using your money correctly has the ability to unlock the keys of the kingdom for God to use you in incredible ways that impact the society around you. So if you have a proper view of money, it draws us closer to God our Father. If you have an improper view of money, what it actually does is it pushes you away from God your Father. How you view money can either be a blessing in your life or it can be a curse. It's all up here and what your attitude towards it is. Would you pray with me? Heavenly